Ever wondered how to take an unwanted book and turn it into an art journal? It's easier than you think, and I'm going to show you how in this video. So I have this Life's Little book that I found when I was purging and cleaning. Each page measures approximately 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches, so the full spread is a 5 by 7, or each individual page is ATC size. This is a good one. The papers are a little bit thicker. They're not extra flimsy, so I'm not going to have to glue things together. And it's stitched. So I'm finding the signatures, find where the thread is, and I'm pulling out 1 or 2 pages in each signature. There are 6 to 8 pages in each signature. So I'm finding the signature, finding the center, which is where the thread is, and pulling out 1 or 2. Now you don't want to break the thread, so if you want to rip the paper instead of doing it the way I'm doing it, that might be a better plan. You don't want to pull the thread. Now, why are we taking out the papers? Because we're going to be adding medium to this. And while I'm not going to add a lot of really thick stuff, I do know that it's going to bulk up. So I don't want to break the spine, so I'm removing some of the papers. Approximately a little under half of the papers are what I'm taking out. So I'm just flipping, finding the signature, find the thread, and ripping 1 or 2 double spread out of the book. This is really important. Now you can save these pages and use them for something else if you wish. Second step is you're going to glue the end papers in the front and the back. At least that's what I'm calling them. I'm not sure if that's the right name. This page there didn't quite lie flat, so I wanted it to lie flat, so I'm gluing it together. Now, if your book has really flimsy pages, you can glue them together. I'm not a big fan of taking the time to do that, to gluing all the pages together. You'll still have to remove some of the pages so you don't end up with the bulk. Next step is I'm going to apply gesso to all the pages. And the quickest way I know to do that is to brayer it on. Now, I'm doing this to prepare the paper for the mediums that I'm going to put on it. It gives it an extra layer of protection. I'm not really concerned about knocking back all that text because that's just going to add another layer, but I do want it to become a porous material because that's going to allow me to do things. Now you could do the whole book or you could do it, apply gesso as you do each page. So on this page, we are going to use distress crayons as the color medium. But before that, I want to add some pattern. And we add pattern with stenciling or stamping. Typically, stencils give bolder patterns. Now, this is a small page, so you don't want things that are too terribly large. And as I said, I'm going to be mindful of I don't want this to get too thick, so I may limit the modeling paste that I put in here. So I'm going to be looking for techniques that work without adding bulk. I've put that in 3 pages or 3 spaces. Then I'm coming back with a stamp. I have a collection of assorted stamps that I picked up at the thrift store that I've purchased. They're small scale and they work perfectly in the background. So dust them off and start using them. Now I'm going to use my distress crayons because they made the use it or lose it pile. And I'm finding that I'm really liking using these. Aged Mahogany, Fossilized Amber, and Barn Door. Now, distress crayons are highly pigmented And you just scribble them on like a crayon and then smudge them with your finger, just like you see me doing. Now, I think the reason that I haven't used my distress crayons is because when I work larger, this is a lot of work. But this is perfect for smaller scale makes. And you're going to see me doing a few techniques with the distress crayons. So I'm putting another color and they blend so nicely together. Now, off camera, I do have a damp rag and I'm wetting my finger just a smidge, and that just helps it activate a little bit faster. Now you can see that all that patterning that I stenciled on with black or stamped on with black is still showing. It's not as opaque as some acrylic paint, so that might be a good reason to use this color medium as opposed to my acrylic paints. I'm also cleaning off my fingers a little bit, but I want that blend. Now I picked 3 colors that are close to each other on the color wheel, and I know they're not going to make mud. If I put green in there with the red, that might make a color that I may not want. And as you can see, you can go on top of other colors and layer the colors and make secondary and colors when you blend them. Now, because it's water activated, if you get color where you don't want it, you can take a baby wipe and wipe it off and reapply color. So that's the advantage of it being water activated. But it doesn't come off super easy. You got to actually apply some pressure in order for it to come off, which I like. Here I'm just adding or intensifying the color by adding another layer of these colors on top of what was there. I wanted it a little bit more vibrant. And so you can up the vibrancy, which is another good trait of the distress crayons. Do you have distress crayons? Are they sitting on your shelf forgotten? Now here's one technique you can do. You can remove the distress crayon through a stencil. Now I chose the script stencil that doesn't have super big openings, so it's a bit of a challenge. But you'll see when I lift it up, the patterning that is left behind. And since I don't want to add bulk here, I'm not adding anything, I'm actually subtracting, so it's not adding bulk to my finished product. Now I wanted to try with a slightly larger opening stencil. So I grabbed the stencil that I used before, and now I'm removing the paint or the distress crayon through the stencil. So now I've got it black stenciled and I have it white tone using this technique. One thing, I did put a coat of gesso, and that's really important to help make it easier to smudge and blend the colors. You want a non-porous surface. Now this is a mandala stencil. I've cut out the middle and I use it separately, but I am just using this part of the mandala stencil. I love that bold patterning that this gives to my vibrant background. So here basically is my background. I'm just going to edge it with black acrylic paint on a makeup sponge. And I will come back and put a focal image, but I didn't know what I wanted to put there. And I was debating about just leaving it as beautiful backgrounds without anything. And since I was undecided, I decided, well, move on and tabled the decision for later. So the second page I'm going for vintage grunge. And I am using another thing that I found in my stash, pattern paper. And it was either you find ways of using this more or get rid of it. Stop storing it. So this time I wanted to keep this color. The last time I tried using the pattern paper, you really couldn't tell that it was there. It did give texture. So it is giving texture, and I am layering this up, and you'll notice where I put 2 layers, it gets darker, but I want to keep that yellow color. I'm going to feature that as part of my page. And because this is very fine tissue paper, it's again not adding a whole lot of bulk to something that I don't want to add a lot of bulk to. So now I'm going to stamp some pattern. This stamp is from the Sacred Geometry stamp set from Stamperia. I love the stamps in this set. I have used so much. And it's a good general one. There's lots of circles, but I find that it always pleases me when I use it. So I'm just doing that with black, and I'm putting black acrylic paint on the stamp. And then I'm using my script stamp to add some script. I want to grunge this up. And you can see how adding the stamps really define this page. Now I wanted to colorize it, and I was tempted to use my distress crayons again, but I grabbed Prussian blue paint and I'm applying it with my finger. Now the Prussian blue is not an opaque paint, so you can see through it once I put it on, especially when I put it on with my finger. It's a very fine coat. And I'm putting it mainly where the white was, but I am where I go over where the pattern paper was, I'm getting kind of a greenish tone as well. So these are really no fuss, no muss pages, but they are beautiful. So back to this one, I decided to use up some small ephemera. I have this flower that was in my stash, and I thought I'm just going to keep a black and white, simple, and I'm going to put a sentiment on here. I didn't want to cover up too much of that gorgeous background. So this is from my Short and Sweet Sentiment Pack, which is perfect size for ATCs or 5x7s. I think it's one of my favorite sets, just so usability. Even better, you can take this, print it onto sticker paper, and then you just peel and stick when you're doing ATCs or small makes like this. So the pansy here is, or viola, or whatever flower it is a napkin that I had glued on to copy paper and cut out. So it's been in my stash. Another word from my Short and Sweet Sentiment Pack, and I'm just gluing that down. That's how easy this is. Now a little bit of finishing, outlining the sentiment, darkening up some of the black lines. Standard issue finishing. Here I'm using my General's charcoal pencil to outline the flowers, just to make them stand out a little bit more from the background. Now the colors on the flower just match so perfectly for that background. You'd think that that was the plan all along. Let me just smudging to edge this page, going with that vintage grunge look. Thank you if you're a subscriber to my channel. If you're not, please hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying my videos. Click on the bell and select the option to be notified of upcoming videos. Gotta add some bling, splattering with gold on both pages, but first I'm going to dry this one before I turn the page. Otherwise I'll have a smudge. So there are my Use It or Lose It cards, which are a free digital download at Ninny's Napkins. It's helping me focus and use those things in my stash that I forgot I had. Go to Ninny's Napkins and download your free digital. Oh, I also use some small ephemera. So there are the finished pages. I love them. Quick, easy, and using a book that would otherwise ended up in the recycle bin. Now I had some gesso left over, so I am painting this time some of the gesso on the pages, and then I moved to the back. So I'm going to work on this book. I'm going to work on the front and then the back, and that's going to help keep it balanced. So again, you can gesso the entire book and have it ready, or you could gesso before you do a creative session. Your choice. I'm going to have this. I like having some pages ready to go. And since I had leftover gesso, had to use it. Thanks so much for joining me. Until next time, go get creative.